I suspect that in the coming weeks, you're going to find a lot of liberals are going to come out this early after the Canadian election and really start to express buyer's remorse for Mark Carney. I mean, for crying out loud, Trump is not done with Canada, even though that's how it was sold for the liberals. When Mark Carney gets up to the cameras and say our relationship with America is over as we've known it, and then immediately after the election, he was almost kind of joking, and it seemed like there was going to be good discussions. And now we're finding out that's not really true. It turns out Trump doesn't like Carney, and he still has his eyes set on Canada. So good job, liberals. You got what you voted for. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And I do want to encourage you guys, if you haven't yet already, do you remember that lovely veteran lady, Pam, who I met at the Nanaimo rally, and I told her I'd get her car? Well, the previous video on this channel, I'll try to link it in the description, is about going out and buying Pam a car with all the receipts laid out. So I highly encourage you guys go and check that video out as well. Without further ado, let's get into it, because if you didn't have a headache, chances are you might after leaving this video.
Plant after plant after plant. Toyota, Honda, Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. I mean, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And I don't like this, but it happens to be. They're stopping work in Mexico, and they're stopping work in Canada, and they're all moving here.
This is important, though. You're not taking the possibility that these tariffs could be permanent off the table. Some of them.
No, I wouldn't do that, because if somebody thought they were going to come off the table, why would they build in the United States?
Let me ask you about...
You understand that, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's why I'm asking, because there's a lot of, I think, uncertainty for CEOs, for business owners. They want to know, are these tariffs permanent?
I think there's only uncertainty in the fake news. I don't think there's uncertainty. I mean, I've been very rigid, very strong on it, but I will say I'm flexible. Like with respect to parts made outside of the country, I gave the automobile companies a little extra time. You know, you're talking about 15% and then 10% of the parts put in a car. I gave them a little extra time without penalizing them. And I did that only to help, you know, companies. We're looking to help companies. We want them.
Yeah, so anybody who thought that our problems would be solved with Mark Carney as a prime minister is very, very, very wrong. It seems like Trump still has it out for Canada, and probably more than ever. And if Trump doesn't get what he wants with Mark Carney, which chances are upon initial negotiations, that won't be the case, then it's going to be a very bumpy ride. So again, I just would absolutely like to thank all the liberals that made this happen. You screwed us. You screwed us hard. And if that was the only time he mentioned Canada in this interview, okay, I mean, that's not the worst, but just wait. There's more.
Let's move on to Canada. You have long talked about making Canada the 51st state. There's obviously a new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who you spoke to after his victory. He says that you didn't talk to him in that call about making Canada a 51st state.
No, he called me. He was very nice, and I congratulated him. He had a victory. It's a very close victory. It's, you know, there's no majority or anything, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult, I think, for him to run. But he nevertheless had a victory, and he's a very nice man, I think.
Do you plan to talk to him about making Canada a 51st state? He wants to come and
see me. He's going to come this week or next week.
So will you talk to him about making Canada a 51st state, annexing Canada?
I'll always talk about that. You know why? We subsidize Canada to the tune of...
I will always talk about that. So there you go, liberals who voted in Mark Carney as the supreme leader. It's never going to end. So a lot of people went out and voted for Mark Carney for the specific reason that he could handle Trump and stop the 51st state comments, stop the governor comments. But as we're finding out, that is never going to stop. And I actually don't know. I don't think that Mark Carney is properly equipped to deal with politics at this level, since he's never been a politician, or more importantly, to deal with Trump. So this is going to be a very, very bumpy ride.
$200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. In fact, we don't want their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't even want their energy. We have more than they do. We don't want their lumber. We have great lumber. All I have to do is free it up from the environmental lunatics. We don't need anything that they have. we're giving them. I asked Mr. Trudeau, who I call Governor Trudeau. I said, not Prime Minister, Governor. I said, Governor Trudeau, could I ask you one question? Why are we giving you $200 billion? Why are we subsidizing Canada? If Canada was a state, it wouldn't cost us. It would be great. It would be such a great, it would be a cherished state. And if you look at our map, if you look at the geography, I'm a real estate guy at heart. When I look down at that without that artificial line that was drawn with a ruler many years ago, it was just an artificial line, goes straight across. You don't even realize what a beautiful country it would be. It would be great. But I don't think the American public wants me to pay $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada. Again, remember this.
Yeah.
We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything. We do very little business with Canada. They do all of their business practically with us. They need us. We don't need them.
You and I talked, and I asked you if you would rule out military force to take.
So this is the scary part. This is the scary part because, again, we're bringing back the discussion of these subsidized payments. That's never going to end. And I frankly don't have confidence in this liberal minority government to get the job done and to start making a lot of money for our country. Within the first days of Mark Carney being elected as Canada's new prime minister, you already have not only Alberta that's talking about separating, quite literally, like very much ready to separate. You not only have Saskatchewan that's now getting ready to separate, you also have the California of Canada, the woke plague in BC. Now, of course, if you're watching from British Columbia, I'm not calling you woke or progressive. I don't consider myself either of those. Just speaking by the general population, Canada or British Columbia has been quite to the left. A lot of testing pilots for this, progressive ideology actually start in British Columbia and then get rolled out through the rest of Canada. Now, that could mean that there's other pilots in other provinces that get rolled out in different ways, yada, yada. But nonetheless, we know that the left coast is kind of British Columbia's name. And even BC, a lot of people, you only need 360 thousand signatures on an actual government petition to trigger a referendum in British Columbia, for those who were curious, 10% of the voting population. So yeah, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. And now we're going to take a look here at military force potentially being used to actually acquire Canada.
You and I talked, and I asked you if you would rule out military force to take Greenland, and you said no, you don't rule out anything. Would you rule out military force to take Canada?
Well, I think we're not going to ever get to that point. It could happen. Something could happen with Greenland. I'll be honest. We need that for national and international security.
But not
I
with
think
Canada?
It's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
Okay, but you don't rule it out for Greenland.
And by the way, Canada, they spend less money on military than practically any nation in the world. They pay NATO less than any nation. They think we're subsidized. They think we are going to protect them. And really, we are. But the truth is, they don't carry their full share, and it's unfair to the United States and our taxpayers.
But you are not ruling out military force to take Greenland.
I don't rule it out. I don't say I'm going to do it, but I don't rule out anything. No, not there. We need that. We need Greenland very badly. Greenland is a very small amount of people, which we'll take care of and we'll cherish them and all of that. But we need that for international security. Do you know we have Russian boats and we have Chinese boats, gunships all over the place, aircraft carriers, gunships, going up and down the coast of Greenland. We need that to be protected. Internationally, we need it.
So you are willing to send U.S. troops to claim a sovereign territory?
I didn't say that. You asked me a question. Would you? Is there a circumstance? It could happen. I doubt it will, but it certainly could happen with respect to Greenland.
Okay, let me ask you about Iran.
We're not even going to entertain that right now. So as you can see, Trump's serious. And even though he said in that answer that he doesn't see having to use military force to take Canada, he also followed up another question saying that he never rules out anything. So does that mean that the American military is going to invade Canada? Probably not. Is it still an idea that could potentially happen theoretically. What if Russian boats start patrolling the coast of Canada? We can't do nothing about it. We don't really have any funding for our military. We are almost the weakest country per GDP in the entire world. That's very well known by everybody. We don't put any money into our military. We don't put any money into building our equipment or getting more troops. In fact, we're much like everything financially in a deficit. We're in a deficit of troops. Lowest recruitment process right now, lowest retention process right now. It's not looking good for Canada. It really isn't. Now, what's the solution? Well, first step would probably be extreme good terms with America. Like, do whatever we need to do to make the big dog happy. Is that happening right now? I don't know. I think we just watched that together. My answer is no. I don't think America's happy with us at all. The American people or the American president. But again, that's my opinion, folks. I would absolutely love to know yours.
Just to recap, we're talking about your desire to claim Canada, Greenland. What do you say to people?
You forgot the Panama Canal.
Panama Canal. What do you say to people who say they voted for you because they wanted you to end foreign conflicts, not start new?
I don't see that as conflict. I think that's good for our country, those things. Look, the Panama Canal was taken over by China effectively. Now China seems to have left, but the Panama Canal, think of this deal. We built the most expensive object we've ever built in the history of our country. That was Mount McKinley. They just took away, I just gave them back the name, but McKinley made the money. Teddy Roosevelt spent the money. McKinley gets very little credit, you know, but he made the, you know how he made the money? Through tariffs. He was the big tariff president. Okay, but forget that. We built the Panama Canal. It was the most expensive thing. It would be the equivalent, like almost $2 trillion today. We've never spent it. And it was very successful. And Jimmy Carter gave it away for $1.
Panama insists Panama says they do control the canal, but we have a couple more questions left tonight.
Panama said what?
Little wrap.
Panama said what?
Panama says they still control it. I know you're saying China. Panama says they still control it.
You know, but if you would have gone there about 5.2 months ago,
yeah.
Every single sign on the Panama Canal, with the exception of about 15% of them, was in Chinese.
Yeah.
So as you can see, Trump is angry. He's angry about a lot of things. And it seems like the world is in total defense mode against Trump and the tariffs and the threat of whatever America and the president of America seems to be doing. Now, is this for the greater good of the American people or us bordering America? I mean, that's up for discussion. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. But what we are dealing with right now is not a good prime minister who's equipped for that. I don't think the liberals are at all equipped for that. In fact, Trump doesn't like Carney's entire team. He doesn't like Chrystia Freeland. I don't believe he likes Dominic LeBlanc and Marco Mendicino. Does he have to deal with Trump at all? Heck, I don't care if Trump likes him or not. I don't like him, and chances are, if you're watching this, you don't like Marco Mendicino either. So even though the figurehead of Canada has left and it's no longer Trudeau, we're still dealt with a minority liberal government, and it's still all of the same people that were working for Trudeau that are again working for Carney. So is anything really going to get done? Probably not, but we're going to have to wait and see how that does play out. But in the meantime, liberals, I think it's time to look inwards and start to see what's happening with the real world and realize that you may have made a mistake, and that's okay. Maybe you're in denial right now, but at some point, we'll welcome you over to the conservative side. And just in case you aren't stressed out yet from this video, let me just sprinkle in a little bit of more stress. Turns out that Mark Carney, well, is going to have to brace himself for America reinitiating an economic war or warfare with Canada. So we've kind of been through turbulent times. We saw even the S&P 500, the stock market, go from an all-time high of like $6,400-ish all the way down to $4,600 in a matter of, I want to say months, but it was probably weeks. Panic, fear, that's kind of everywhere. It feels like we're returning back to a level of normalcy, not just with the stock markets, but just with the tariffs and how that's kind of on the back burner. But It's still there. It's still very much there. And well, we're going to take a look at CTV Political Analysts and what they have to say about the matter.
Okay, this meeting is Tuesday. That's a lifetime away with Donald Trump, isn't it? What do you think we can expect leading up to the meeting and then the meeting itself?
Well, I think we're going to hear from both men who are going to be talking about not only what they want to get out of the meeting, but also making clear what the challenges are, particularly around the issue of trade. And we know Donald Trump has used a lot of false data when talking about the relationship between Canada and the United States. So we're going to continue to hear that. I think it will be incumbent upon the prime minister to actually certainly set the record straight in terms of the relationship, and also find a way to get Donald Trump to move from this false narrative of the relationship, because we know that's how Donald Trump is engaging in very debilitating trade policies with Canada. And so if he can find a way to move Donald Trump away from that, I think that will make for a much more constructive meeting that will take place on Tuesday. If not, then I think we could see a very combustible, perhaps very spirited meeting and, of course, press avail between the two men.
Now, is it stick and carrot for Carney? Just the carrot, just the stick? What would Trump best respond to, do you think?
I think Donald Trump is looking for a relationship that works. But I also think what we're seeing from Donald Trump is Donald Trump wants a subservient relationship with Canada. He wants Canada to be a part of the United States. That's not going to happen, but that's where Donald Trump is. How does Carney move Donald Trump from that position? It's anyone's guess at this point. And also, what we can see in terms of this meeting, this could be a meeting where you have two men playing nice, acting nice, saying all the right things. And then once the meeting is over, Donald Trump goes back to economic warfare against Canada. That certainly is not what we want to say, what the prime minister wants to see either. But clearly, the prime minister needs to be prepared for both in all situations.
And with Trump, do you think we'll see him calling Carney the 51st governor like he did with Trudeau?
He has not done so at this time, and I don't believe that he will. I think there was clearly just a personal animus that Donald Trump had for Justin Trudeau. And I think, at least in terms of the personal relationship between the prime minister and the president, I think it's on a very different, much more amicable footing. And so that certainly will help as well.
And what do you think a realistic outcome is of this meeting?
I think a realistic outcome of this meeting would be the president actually standing down and moving away from these tariffs that he has actually placed on Canada, particularly when it comes to aluminum and steel, and also in terms of what he's looking at in terms of lumber. And we know the Commerce Department is also focusing on tariffs on pharmaceuticals, which would certainly impact Canada as well, considering they ship so many pharmaceutical items to the United States. So if Donald Trump can move away from that, that will certainly, I think, be a boom to both economies, considering that both contracted during the first quarter.
Okay. Eric, thanks as always, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
So just to conclude everything, I can kind of chalk this up to we're in for a very bumpy ride, Canada. Not to put some fear into people, not to try to lead you to believe that we're going to be invaded by America, because we heard Trump say that it's very unlikely that American troops are going to take over Canada. And as much as Trump hates it, we are still kind of protected by America. We're not necessarily going to be treated as if we are American with the type of response if there were to be a threat to Canada. However, we are very lucky to be bordering the world superpower. And the way I look at it is Canada, we don't have the potential to be a superpower, not with a liberal government, not with the fact that 43 or 44% of the country is still living in this utopia land of everything is farts and rainbows and all that, ideological progressive stuff. We don't have that potential. We're very much throttled by our own people. America has that potential. They are still the world superpower. And if you had to pick a country out there that would be the world superpower, let's go with 3. Who would you pick? China, Russia, or America? The answer is clear for me, and that's America. I don't think we should be kissing their butt, but I don't think wrongly, I strongly don't think that we should be picking a fight with them. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be super awesome for you guys to show your appreciation by slapping a like on the video, subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you in another one. Bye for now.